Three, two, one. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Greg here. I'm with my very good friend Larry Friedman, and you guys are in for a treat today. We're gonna talk about a lot of cool stuff. You guys are gonna get a lot of value, a lot of takeaways from this. So, Larry, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thank you for being up bright and early. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Larry's coming in from New York City, and it is 6:19 here out in San Diego. So I told Larry, just because I got you on the show, man, I'll get up really early, and
Well, I appreciate that. I'm happy to be here, and hopefully we'll have a nice conversation and share some
awesome.
value with your
Very
listeners.
good. Very good. So, Larry, would you mind kind of sharing with everyone just kind of your introduction, your background, kind of where you came from, and then we can kind of get into what you did before you were a full-time investor?
Yeah, sure. So my background is actually in accounting. So I graduated with a BS in accounting. I worked for a large accounting firm for 3 years out of college. I received my CPA, and I really, at the time, I did enjoy the work, but it wasn't fulfilling, and I wanted to make some more money. So that was when Wall Street was booming. So I then went over to Wall Street, worked in equity research for about 5 years, and I really did pretty well financially there, but just kept having that unfulfilling feeling. Those 7 o'clock meetings and 6 a.m. meetings and getting home at 11 o'clock just was starting to wear on me. So I decided at that point, I'm leaving, I'm collecting my last bonus, and I'm going to get into being a real estate agent, which of course I knew nothing about, but decided why not let me take a leap. So, a lot of times I jump in first and then, see if there's water in the pool. So that was one of those decisions. And about 6 months into me being a real estate agent, I realized I like the business, but I don't know how much I like being a real estate agent. And I teamed up with a couple of guys. One of them is my current partner. And we started a real estate brokerage company in Manhattan. It was very small. We had, it was probably like 3 people in the beginning. And then over, I think it was about a 7-year process, we grew to over 500 agents, over 8 offices in Manhattan. And, we were one of the top, definitely in the top 10 in terms of sales volume, transaction volume. So we really built a huge business. And essentially what happened, we did a lot of mergers, some acquisitions. The last transaction we did just to grow, to get to that size, the last transaction we did, we partnered in with someone who we thought would be a great partner. On paper it was awesome because we had complementary skills, but just the relationship and the trust, and it became a disaster. And essentially we both sued each other. The business started to implode, and it didn't really end well. And that was at that time, the business abruptly came to a standstill. And here I was. It was about 5 years ago, and I had no income. I just had 3 kids at home, and all of a sudden everything just ended, and I didn't know what to do. And so my current partner and I got into brokerage. Thought maybe we're going to open another brokerage. Realized, what, we did this already. I don't know if we want to do this again. And we had loaned money to a couple of house flippers that did pretty well, and that kind of intrigued us. And then we decided, why don't we maybe get into this business? And little by little, we started to grow the business, and we've grown to a pretty good scale. Last year, we did 62 transactions last year. So that's kind of where I am. Fast forward where I am today.
Wow, holy cow, that was a lot to unpack there. So kind of started in the accounting world. Obviously I've known you for a while. You are a very good numbers guy. You really know your stuff with the underwriting. So, and then you pivoted into, the Wall Street stuff. And, it sounds like, the money was there, but, working 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. to answer to the man is just not what Larry Friedman's all about in life.
No, especially if you're passionate about it and you love doing it, why not? And some of the guys that I was working with, they loved it. I just couldn't wait to get home and do something else. So I realized, I can't do this. It's all, you think it's all about the money, but I think at some point it's just, you have to be into something. At least I do.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Money's good, but if you're just doing it for the money, you're going to get burned out. You got to be passionate. I think you and I are both passionate about this business that we're both doing. So, and then you shift, obviously you shift into that brokerage business. You're a realtor for a while. So let's chat a little bit about the whole brokerage thing, and then we'll pivot into some of the stuff that you're doing now with SDF Capital. So with that partnership, from the time you guys kind of made the decision to merge and bring on that partner, to the time you did that, and then when it went completely in the gutter, I mean, how long did that process take? And then what were like the first signs that you saw that kind of got you thinking like, hey, we might be in a little bit of a jam here? And how did that kind of unravel?
Oh, so the first year,
Yeah.
our growth was like a rocket ship, and we were getting a lot of press, and we were really we got along fairly well. And I think what started to happen was he was always used to making his own decisions, and we were always used to making our own decisions. And inevitably, you're going to have a situation where you just don't agree, and that's healthy in any business. I mean, I have that with my current partner. The question is, how do you react when that situation occurs? So we had these types of situations where, for instance, we felt that the market was starting to slow and wanted to pull back on the physical growth strategy, because in Manhattan, real estate offices are super expensive, and building out an office and staffing it, you're in the red for 6-7 months, and you have to have real big cushion to do that. And I felt that was a dangerous decision. He felt that if you build it, they will come. Now again, so we felt strongly that this was a bad decision. He felt it was a good, and rather than just talking it out and kind of coming to some kind of compromise, he began imposing his will. He began looking for space. He began, wanted to sign a lease. So it was like making decisions that were unilateral. And then when we did have disagreements, not having a civil disagreement, yelling and screaming. And, if I were to make a decision and say, something to another example, to an agent, he would say the opposite. So it just became like a snowball effect where we have different philosophies on growth, different ways of treating people. I don't yell and scream. That's not my strategy or style. I think people deserve to be treated well. And, I think we disagreed in that respect of how to treat people as well. And the culture started to change. Like his culture and ours were just so different. So it was just one of these situations where you could see it by, again, one-off disagreement, not a big deal. It's how you behave when there is a disagreement. And that was what was challenging and troubling. And really that's kind of what led to the downfall. So I think, my takeaway is it's all about the people. It's a marriage. Business is a form of a marriage. And the person could be great, and you can think I'll make a lot of money together. But if you really can't get along with that person and you can't respect each other's opinions and have civil disagreements, I think it's a bad partnership. In hindsight, we probably should have got to know each other better. And I had heard a lot of things, and I like to make my own decisions. I don't like to, listen to what other people have to say. But, sometimes when, a couple people say things, you should listen to what they have to say and take it more seriously as well. So that's kind of the long answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, you guys were, it's not like you guys were doing a few transactions a month. This was a big decision. You guys had a major company with 500 agents and
it was a big company
in Manhattan, out of all places. So this was not like you were, selling hot dogs from a hot dog cart with your best friend. This was a serious endeavor. So listen, I hope you guys, some listeners got some value from that. Larry is a very experienced business guy. He's been in the game for a long time. So that's why I wanted to twist his arm to get him on the show here today. So Larry, so moving on from your background, which is super interesting, we're going to have Frank on the show too, your partner. So let's kind of unpack your current business model, SDF Capital, your bread and butter, way to do deals in today's market. And we'll kind of get into that and some tips on success for the investment game.
So our model is transitioning now. I think the one thing that we do that's well in our business is we have multiple exit strategies. So we are very experienced rehabbers. We can wholesale, we can assign. So that allows us to really be very versatile. We can take down a property if we can't assign it. So we have the ability to do, I want to say do it all. We don't do new builds. That's pretty much the only thing we don't do. Our strategy last year was we did about 60% of our business was rehabs. The rest being wholesale and assignments, just the difference being, an assignment, we don't close, whereas a wholesale, we'll close it, maybe do a clean out and put it right back on the market. So that's kind of what we do. And, the way we're changing this year is, the market's transitioning, we feel, and, we're trying to do a lot less rehabs, and the rehabs we decide to do, they need to sketch out and have a lot bigger profits. So that's, and then everything else will either, for the most part, I think we're just going to be taking down a lot more property, doing clean outs and putting it right back on. That's what we're looking to do for 19.
Okay. So last year you guys were really big in the high end rehab. You guys had a lot. At one point you guys had 25, 30 properties under construction. You guys were basically a construction company too. It was a lot. I remember we were talking on the phone and you were like, man, got all these rehabs going. I don't know what I'm going to do. So, okay. So what was the reason now, Larry, for all the renovations? I mean, I know a lot of guys who rehab. I know a lot of guys who wholesale. What, with you and Frank is Larry's partner for everyone listening, what made you guys, so I know, remember Larry, we had that conversation on the phone and you guys were doing the wholesales, and then the guys you were selling the properties to, you know, they were making a lot of money on the rehab. So what kind of made you want to pivot from, you know, more assigning to that big renovation model in 2018?
So last year, and probably up to last year, the market was on an upswing, at least in our markets. And what we would do is we would assign something, you'll get a pretty nice assignment fee, and we'd follow the property and we'd say, wow, wait a second, you know, we thought it was worth, you know, 350 the ARV, and you know, the person that we assigned it to sold it for 4.25. Like, wow, we are just leaving money on the table left and right.
Yeah.
So we made a conscious decision. So why don't we not assign anymore? I mean, let's capture as much revenue as we can and let's rehab. So sure. That really was looking around and thinking that we're getting these deals. It's so difficult to get these deals. Why not take them to full value? And that was really what drove us to do the rehab strategy. What I think the issue or the problem that we have with that is in certain markets, they changed on us. And also some of the higher end in some of the areas that we're in just really has gotten really crushed. So that, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because rehabbing can be dangerous. It's the most profitable strategy if done correctly, but you could, you know, quickly lose a ton of money if your ARV is off, your construction costs are higher than expected. So there's just there's multiple points of failure in a rehab versus, you know, an assignment or a wholesale. So, but that was why we decided to kind of transition, and that's why we did, you know, 60 some odd % last year. I think it was 63% of our deals were rehabs.
Wow. Okay. So you were kind of following, just to kind of reiterate. So you were you're assigning the contract. And if you guys don't know what that is, you're basically, you know, putting a piece of property under contract, and then you're selling the rights to your contract to somebody else for an assignment fee. You're basically flipping the paperwork. So you're doing that, and then you're seeing the guys you're wholesaling to, let's say you made 20 or 30 grand on the assignment fee. They're making 80, 90 grand on the rehab. And you're like, damn, I already got the property secured. Why don't I just take this thing all the way? But what people don't tell you is, you know, when you're rehabbing now, you have more risk. You have contractors, you have people who have to be at job sites, and you have the market, obviously, because a rehab sales cycle is probably, you know, 5 to 8 months, would you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially in New York. I mean, where it's attorney driven, you know, it's a long sales cycle.
Absolutely. Okay. So now you're pivoting, you know, you're pivoting more into assigning and less risky deals, which is good. So guys, if you're out there and you're listening, what is it? January 2019, the market is shifting right now. So if you guys are out there doing high-end rehabs, I mean, listen to Larry. I mean, he's going to say, I mean, the market's changing. You got to make sure that you guys are watching yourselves and you're not getting yourselves into stuff, biting off more than you could chew. So cool, Larry. Good stuff. So let's kind of get into some of your best tips on success. I guess let's keep this, a rehab-friendly show. So I don't want to go all over the place and confuse everyone. So you guys are probably the biggest rehabbers I know in the area. You guys have more experience than pretty much every investor out there in the Hudson Valley. So what are your best tips? If we had to boil it down to the top 3 tips, if you want to be successful rehabbing properties, what would you tell my listeners?
So I'd say, first and foremost, it's all about the ARV. If you get that wrong, you have a serious problem. So, I mean, I think that's for not just for rehabbing, that's for assigning, wholesaling. You need that ARV. That needs to be correct, and that needs to be verified. If you know the market cold, fantastic. If you don't, you need to partner in or bring people in that can help you to establish the value. So number 1 is know the ARV. Rehab specific, you need a detailed scope of work. And what inevitably happens is there's something you missed, and it happens all the time. The thing is, you don't want to miss major mechanicals. You don't want to miss a septic. You don't want to miss, a well that's got a problem. I mean, these things can cost you, 10, 15, 20K. So that could be literally on a small deal, your profit. So yeah. I think that scope of work, it's not just the scope of work of let me do the kitchen, let me do the bathroom. That's more of the easy stuff. It's the major mechanicals and some of the other issues that pop up. So I guess just to add to not just the scope, it's also making sure, let's make this point 3. So it's the scope, and then point 3 would be the diligence. And that is, are you on town water? Are you on, is it public? Is it private? what's going on with the septic, what's happening with
leach field,
with the leach fields. We had a one property in New York that was on, everything was on municipal, not a problem, right? Of course. What we found out was this vacant house, the gas was cut off from the street.
Oh gosh, is this the one in Yonkers?
Yes. So it took us 6 months to literally get the gas on. We finished the rehab, in a month, and had to wait 6 months. And had I done a little bit of better diligence and realized that a vacant house, and called up the utility company and realized, there is no service here anymore, and realized what the cycle was to get it on, I probably would have thought twice about that deal. So it's just all that diligence. We're calling the town, we're getting, if there is, septic plans, we're getting them. I mean, it's really doing a lot of the homework up front to make sure that you're minimizing your risk, because, all of a sudden one of these costs creeps up. Like I said, it could be your profit, or it could just, take you into red. So.
Yeah, totally, man. That's guys, that you just got absolute gold from a guy who's rehabbed hundreds of houses. Guys, you got to do your homework, especially with, where Larry and I are from. I'm living in California now, but I'm from New York. So, we invest in the same market. That's how we know each other. And, especially up in the Northeast, the properties, it's a very, especially like in Yonkers, Larry, it's a very block by block city. I mean, you have areas where, up in Upper Westchester, where it's all septic and well, every property, like, Pine Ridge and all those houses. I mean, you're dealing with septics now. So a lot of people who are listening, maybe if you live in a bigger, a Western city, or you're out in Texas, another market I invest in, it's all city stuff, and there's no basements. But up in the Northeast, there's a lot more issues you're going to be dealing with. So make sure you know your market, especially if you're rehabbing. So good stuff, Larry. Absolute gold. So let's get into the back half of the show here. So this is my favorite part. We're going to talk about your best deal ever that you've done, Larry. We're going to unpack your best deal ever from start to finish and pull some lessons out.
Okay, so I actually have quite a lot of good deals that we've done, and quite a lot of deals.
But you have to pick one. Your best deal, yeah.
Only one, Greg. Okay.
Only one, man.
All right. So there's a property that we bought in December of 17. I'm sorry. It was December of 17, and it was an area that we don't necessarily generally buy in, but we did the comps, realized this was a good property, got it under contract, and we closed on the property. We did absolutely nothing to this property. We bought it, believe we bought it for $225, closed on it.
Okay.
Put it back on the market for $325, had multiple offers, and we closed at, I think it was $335 or $340 with literally nothing. So that was a phenomenal deal, and I wish I had the deals like that all the time.
What?
So that was a great deal.
$10,000 spread. What was that one? Was that the one in Rockland County?
Yes.
Which one?
Yes.
Was that the one in Muncie?
Airmont is the name of the town. Yes.
So let's unpack that. So you just made a quick 6 figs without doing much. So what was this? I know you're not in the acquisitions department, but what was kind of the skinny on this deal? I mean, why was this guy, giving his property away, and what was the? Let's just kind of go through this a little bit more in detail. So you bought it for $225. What do you think the ARV on it was? I mean, you just sold it as is, but I mean,
I think the ARV was in the high 4s, because the person that we sold it to renovated it and put it on the market for like, 4 something, and it sold.
Made a profit.
So there was a lot of meat on that bone. I mean, that would have been a great deal. If we wanted to rehab that, we probably could have made even more. But, again, I'm not complaining making, a quick 6-figure profit by just closing on it.
No, absolutely.
The gentleman here was distressed. It was a distressed seller. His house, it's a complete disaster. He wasn't a hoarder, but it was just, he was a quasi hoarder, and nothing was working. He was sitting in the house with no heat. There was like a roof. I mean, you name the issue in this house, it had it. So he was just, happy that somebody wanted to buy the house, and really was very easy to deal with, and it was a very smooth transaction.
Wow.
He had pain. He had major pain. He wanted to get out of there. He wanted the warm weather. The house was giving him just lots of headaches, and he was done.
Holy cow. Well, listen, that's a heck of a buy there, Larry. I mean, that's the benefit of working in some of these higher end markets, guys and girls. I mean, New York and California, I mean, they're expensive properties, but you can have I know guys, I mean, Larry, I mean, 6-figure wholesale deals. I mean, I have a friend in Long Island. I'll get him on the show. I mean, 6-figure wholesale deals without rehabbing them. So there's big spreads out there.
Now, Greg, that's not the norm, obviously.
No, absolutely not the norm.
I don't want the listeners to think it's 6-figure wholesales all the time. It certainly is. No. This is a singles business, as we like to say.
Yeah,
but once in a while, you hit a home run.
That's it. Yeah, but if you're at the plate swinging, you'll hit a home run. If you
you got to swing the bat, no question.
Yeah. You know what? I brought it up. What we'll do after we talk about your worst deals, we'll give them a little highlight of that Jersey Avenue deal.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that. We did it together. That was a fun deal. Yeah, it was a very profitable deal too.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. Just disclaimer: not every deal will be 6 figures, but if you swing enough, trust me, you'll hit a few of those, and they'll be worth it. So Larry, let's kind of pivot to your worst ever deal. I call it your biggest turkey. So let's unpack it, the lessons, the mistakes. You know, how painful was it financially? And then we'll pivot into that Jersey Avenue file, and we'll start to wrap the show up. So your worst deal ever.
The worst deal ever is happening as we speak. Okay. So the worst deal ever is in Connecticut. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. We were at a point in the market last year, probably last summer, where the market was actually turning. And obviously we didn't really see it or feel it because the properties were still moving fast. And still, we really were having a lot of success. So we bought a property in Connecticut that generally don't buy in the area. It's a higher end area.
Okay.
We
what
bought
town?
The property at an extensive. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg.
What town is it in Connecticut?
So this is in Westport.
Oh, that's where Jim Randall's from. One of my favorite real estate guys. The Confessions.
So Westport is a great area.
Oh, town. Yeah.
And so we bought this house and.
Westport.
Yeah, I gave 3 lessons about rehabs, and of course we violated all 3 with this house. So we bought the house, and we bought it in the winter time. So I was talking about the summer, the market being changed. But I think we bought it, I'd say, last February. So February of 18.
Okay, so
we bought it in the winter, and I bring that up for a reason because it was covered in snow. The house was, all the landscaping was covered. This is a huge house. This is, I think, 1.5 acres and 3,000 square feet. Again, this is not our normal house. But we decided, hey, this is a great opportunity. We saw a big ARV, and we decided, let's swing the bat. This is going to be a nice 6-figure profit, but it's going to be a big real. So, of course, that's the way it's sketched out. Subsequent to that, we started to rehab. There was significant cost overrun because the rehab wasn't properly estimated.
Okay.
And what happened is, come around April, one was still rehabbing it. We had a crew there of like 2 guys, which you never have a 2-man rehab crew if you want to move quickly. You got to have 5 or 6 guys. So that was another disaster because the crew wasn't sufficient, and we had so many other projects going on that it really we didn't give it the attention it deserved. Then what happened is, come April, when all the snow was gone, and we realized like the landscaping in this house, meaning the hardscaping, the concrete, the walkways, were a disaster. Like every single thing was falling apart. So all of a sudden now add 20 or 30K of hardscaping that wasn't in because it was covered in snow. We had no idea. And this is an enormous house. So that's why, in a smaller house, you don't deal with these types of problems. So add that to the construction overrun. Then fast forward to around the summer when the market started to change. Connecticut itself is going through some significant issues as a state that are negatively impacting value. Also, you have a lot of like hedge funds and other places that are moving out of Connecticut. So in these higher end markets in Connecticut, plus, the salt and everything else going on, just literally overnight, the ARVs dropped by 10 to 12%. So on a $900,000 house, so you guys can do the math. So that's the profit, basically. So you have that plus a significant overrun in the construction and a dropping market. So that's where we are today with this house. It is.
So where's it at now? I mean, it sounds like you guys are in a little bit of a quagmire on this thing.
Just a bit.
Yeah. Do you have any other exit strategies on this one?
Yeah, we do. So we're actually putting it out for rent, and it's not a great rental, but we may just have to hold this thing as an accidental rental. Anyone that does a lot of deals, that's kind of a term that we throw around. You don't want to have a lot of accidental rentals, otherwise you get it wrong. So that's kind of, we're looking to exit either way. Any of your listeners are interested in buying it, contact me. Happy to sell it to you. So we're getting some bites, and we're just lowering the price. I mean, for us, we just like to cut quickly and to take the loss. So you see we focus way more on the loss and on this deal because this is really where all the learning happens.
Yeah, seriously, this might be painful for Larry, but you guys, I mean, just listening to this, you can learn some lessons that Larry's paying for. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this might be a tough deal for Larry, but he's going to learn from this one. And I mean, at the end, I mean, you guys got to realize like this is the reality of the business. Like you see a lot of the marketing and stuff. Like no, like this is what happens sometimes. You're going to get yourself in some bad deals. You're going to get yourself some challenges, and you got to find ways to overcome them. Larry and Frank could have thrown their hands up at this thing and looked at it, but they decided to obviously have a better exit strategy. They're going to hold it as a rental, and then obviously the market will come back and they will.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing just to note is when you do these types of houses and you rehab, you have to have significant capital because you're paying interest costs, you're paying the contractors, you're paying all the utilities, you're paying for the snow removal, the lawn. So it's really a lot of house flippers don't realize that these are all costs that you have to really think through, and you have to always. If you asked me last year would I be holding this for a year, I would have laughed at you. So this is kind of where we are, and the reality is thankfully we have a ton of really good deals, but these things happen.
Make up for the. So real quick before we get into the Jersey Avenue file, what did you do to finance this? Because this is a big buy. This is not like a little Greg Helbeck and Devin King deal where we're buying something for 30 and selling it for 60. This is a real, actual big boy deal. What did you do to finance this deal? Because you've had it for a year, and this is not a cheap house. This is in Westport. This is on the Long Island Sound. So how did you finance this property?
Well, we financed it through three ways: with hard money,
okay,
private money, and our own capital.
Okay.
So we're, it's a big deal. Yeah. And it's expensive to hold. And that was kind of what I was alluding to also before is, you need to have, you have to be capitalized.
Yeah. Especially in that market. So my goodness. All right. Well, you guys will get out of that one. I know you guys very well.
Yeah, so we will.
Yeah.
So you'll get some bites. So I'm sure the next time we talk, I'll have an update for you.
That's right. Well, let's get in. So before we wrap the show up, we're going to get into something. I want to kind of teach some of the newer investors here. Larry and I, we actually first met. I think I cold called his partner Frank when I got started, and we became friends. And I was super young at the time, and we were just trying to find ways to kind of collaborate with each other because he was kind of new in the business, I was brand new in the business, and we ended up doing a deal together that kind of put us both on the map, I guess, in terms of being able to have a business relationship. So Larry, I'll let you kind of take the lead on this one, on the Jersey Avenue deal, that wild roller coaster we went on, which actually sparked my career as a Harry.
This was
now that's my
this was a very profitable deal and a fun deal. So I think Greg, it was either a tax. I think it was a tax delinquent, right?
Tax delinquent.
Yeah. So Greg found the lead. The gentleman who had the tax delinquency. And I think there was code violations and tax delinquency. So it was like a trifecta. And I think, and Greg, this was a while ago, so you have to help me out with some of the details. I think that it was difficult to get in touch with the gentleman. We had some phone calls. We had agreed on a price. And then literally for like a month, there was a standstill. He kept saying it was hard for him to get to the FedEx. He was going to send us the documents.
Yeah,
send the contract, and after like a week or two, or I don't think it was a month, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks. Greg and I decided, let's just go to his house and let's literally bring a contract, have him sign the contract, and have a lawyer call over the phone and let him. So we essentially brought him to FedEx. I mean, we did everything to get this deal, the contract signed at least. The gentleman represented to Greg and I that he was the executor of his late mother's estate.
Yes.
His mother had a trust. He was the trustee. I asked him for a copy of the trust. He gave me the trust. I'm not a lawyer. The trust looked like it was good. It showed him clearly as a trustee. And, Greg and I thought we were off to the races, and, we would just basically, he had the right to sell the real estate. It was a major fee for us. Yeah, so about, a couple of weeks later, in New York, the lawyers slowed down everything. But a couple of weeks later, the lawyers say, hey, we got some bad news. And simple. What's the bad news? Said, the gentleman that you're dealing with has no authority to sell the property. And I said, no, I think you misunderstood. He's the trustee. It clearly says it in the trust. And, he absolutely has the authority. And they said, yes. However, the property is not owned by the trust. The property was never deeded into everything was done correctly with the trust, but the property was never deeded into the trust. So the trust owns nothing. So he has no right to sell. So I said, all right, well, what does that mean? So it means do we have to go through a probate proceeding, which I don't know if your listeners are familiar, but that could be, it could be 2 months to 2 years, depending upon, the speed. So what we did is we were able to avoid the probate proceedings because there is, and without getting into too many details, I guess there's legal passage. If a mother dies, it goes to the children. If the children die, it goes to their children. Legal passage. So, and Greg, I know you know probably more about this than I do, but at that point, since he was the sole surviving heir, we were able to have him potentially sign. He said he represented that everybody was deceased in his family, and then he was the sole surviving heir. So basically, he needed to, I guess, attest to that, and we needed to get some letters. We then found out that because he had a deceased brother, that the brother's children would be entitled to 50% of the proceeds, and they couldn't sell the property unless the children signed. Yeah. In this case, we thought it was children, but actually child. So we had to track down the child. They don't speak to each other. They didn't have the phone number, so we had to skip trace, find the child. I think my partner called the child, right, Greg? Ultimately, we got it to the finish line. There was with multiple letters, multiple affidavits, and months and months of work. So literally, I think a week before the closing, Greg or someone takes a picture, and there is a tax foreclosure saying this house will be foreclosed and sold at auction in like 5 days. And we're still hustling and running to get all the paperwork and docs signed. We finally got it signed. We go to the closing table and we get this deal closed. And we all gave.
He signs. He signs off.
He signed it, and then the closing was literally I don't know, the next day, something like that. Yeah. We get it, the deal to the closing table. Greg and I had developed a relationship with this gentleman. He happened to be a nice guy. We had lunch a couple times together, and he was so eager to sell and eager to telling us what he's going to use the proceeds for, and so happy that Greg and I were able to help him and my partner Frank, and that so it ended nicely. So I called them afterwards to just say, hey, we had a good time and thank you for your helping, and he wasn't picking up the phone. And I said to Greg, I don't know, I guess he's upset with me. I mean, it's bizarre because we had such a nice relationship. Yeah. So another week passes, and I call again, and someone else picks up the phone, and I asked to speak with the gentleman, and they said, I'm sorry, he passed away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was the most bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, and I feel terrible. He was such a nice man. But literally, this came down to the 11th hour where we sold it, and then we sold it to an end buyer ultimately. It was just a crazy deal.
It was a 6-figure spread. It was an absolute it was a double close. It was a home run. Anyhow, so what Larry just said, so we literally signed the docs on this property. I think the seller passed the next day. He wasn't in very good health. He was an older gentleman, but I mean, if that were to happen before we signed the closing docs, we would have all been in a major, major pickle, and that thing would have been down the gutter. Would you say?
It would have had to have another probate, and then it would have been his next of kin, and it would have been,
Yeah, it would have been, and the kid was a minor. We would have been. We were a hair away from wasting our time. So, guys, we wanted to tell you that story because number one, here's 2 takeaways: collaborate with people in your market. They're not your competitors; they're people you can work with. Number 2, especially too, when I got started back, this is a couple of years ago now, I had no experience, no track record. I was 20 years old. And I had no idea how to take something like this to the finish line. No freaking clue. If it wasn't for Larry and Frank, this thing would have been, it would have been going down a conveyor belt into the slaughterhouse because it wouldn't have gotten closed. So work with people in your market who are doing big things. And now I actually, from this property, it kind of planted the seed to this is where my only niche in the market is doing properties like this now, these tougher properties with title issues. And takeaway number 2 is, guys, I mean, this is not the best properties you're going to buy and sell for the most part are going to be ones that are challenging like this, where we had to scramble. We had to make several trips to Pennsylvania. We had to, fight and claw our way to get to this deal. So, guys, you got to just keep persistent out there and try to not pursue the low hanging fruit too much. I mean, it's good, but I mean, something like this was almost these deals are almost more fun because when you complete them, you're like, damn, that felt freaking awesome. This was hard and we made money and, we solved this problem. So they almost feel more rewarding because they're more challenging. So glad we got to share that. So we're going to really wrap this thing up now. So Larry, before we go here, how can we help you? How can my listeners and myself help you? What are you and your company? What are you guys looking for? How can we add value to you and SDF Capital? And then we'll just get your best contact info, probably your email or something, and people can reach out to you if they'd like to collaborate.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, I think one of the ways we are launching a new fund, we have one fund that we're closing out, and we're in the process of launching another fund. We're going to this fund is going to focus on lending. We're going to be one of the lenders that or one of the borrowers of the fund, but we're going to be running the fund. We're going to be lending to other hard money lenders that have experience. So this is something we're going to be raising, and we're going to be looking to raise some capital pretty soon. We'll have our PPM out, and it's going to be for accredited investors. And it's something that within the next, I'd say, 2 to 3 months, that we'll be launching. So if any of your listeners interested in getting involved, and obviously they can watch the deals through the process, it could be a fun way for them to learn as well, and also make some good spreads.
Absolutely. So guys, if you're interested in learning more about what Larry and Frank are doing, and trust me, they're doing big things, reach out to Larry. So Larry, what's the best way to have everyone contact you? Maybe a website and an email.
Yeah. So my email is Larry, Larry at SDF Capital LLC. So that's 3 L's, SDFCapitalLLC.com. And our office line, which is the best place to probably get me at, is 888-604-4128. And then our website is www.sdfcapitalllc.com.
Awesome. So we'll make sure we put some of that in the notes here on the YouTube channel and then the podcast. So Larry, listen, man, I'm glad I got you on here. It was super fun. I think the listeners got a lot of value, some stories, some lessons, and I think this was a real good one, man. So I'm really appreciative for you coming on here, and let's do some more deals together, huh?
Absolutely. I wish you continued success and your listeners.
Awesome. All right. See ya.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.